clouds on fire, the air is sharp. Voices rising, breaking the dark. Hearts thump faster like a drum. The night's alive, here it comes. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of the future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Lights are flashing, the screens are tall. Waves of hope crash through the hall. Win or lose, the story grows. Every step the nation shows. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of the future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Lights are flashing, the screens are tall. Waves of hope crash through the hall. Win or lose, the story grows. Every step the nation shows. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of a future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Let's go clear. Let's go clear. Some will sigh, some will shout. Voices tangled in the doubt. But through the noise, the truth will soar.
And a bit of a juggle up on the shows. We're going to cover election results tonight because it's been a dull week in New Zealand's parliament. They're still in recess, and the last lot of footage is from about 4 weeks ago. But the interesting thing that comes out of here is that there have been 3 elections in the world. The 2 general elections that are very big and very well known what the results are, and the hidden Easter egg that the New Zealand public need to look at is what's happened in the UK. And it ain't quite so rosy, with Reform Party gaining 677 new councillors. And I'm not sure if that's what people wanted to hear. So, how is everyone?
I'm doing pretty good. Last night I watched the Singaporean elections as well. That was another election that was held. It was being held at the same time as the Australian one, so I had 2 elections running at the same time. As everyone knows, Labour won in Australia. I don't know if people know this, but surprisingly enough, the Labour equivalent party in Singapore, the Workers' Party, actually did better than I thought they would. Because they're a very conservative country. The Conservatives won by a landslide, as they always do. But what I found really interesting was how much they won by, and it wasn't by much in each region. So, yeah, it's very interesting seeing that, okay, the younger population is coming along and they're voting for more progressive things.
Yeah, you're right, Laura. I think that is quite interesting, actually, in Singapore. I mean, I've spent a bit of time living over there. I've got family that lives over there.
Okay.
And democracy is kind of a new concept in that part of the world. Most people just tend to vote for the government, and so yeah, that is an interesting one. But I certainly spent a bit of time looking at the Australian election. Canadian election is a very interesting result. But yeah, let's have a bit of a chat about it.
Yeah, certainly. And do you believe Christopher Luxon could lose Botany and David Seymour could potentially lose Epsom after seeing what happened to Pierre Poilievre, I think if that's how you say his name, and Peter Dutton not just losing the election, but losing their seats?
Yeah, well, I mean, that result really got me excited around the Dixon result. Not only did Dutton lose his seat, but he lost his seat to a disabled candidate and a big supporter of the NDIS and the Australian health system. So, that one really, I was clapping for that one, and I think that's a particularly positive result, not only for the ALP, but for disabled people around the world who think they want to put their hand up and get themselves involved in politics. So that one was a real highlight, that one was great.
Yeah. So as far as Epsom is concerned, it's going to all depend on how pissed off the rich people are living there with Seymour. With Luxon, same with Luxon's neck of the wood as well. They're quite wealthy areas where you've got people that have like high income jobs and stuff like that have business interests. So they're probably more likely to keep their seats. But yeah, I mean, it's a year away. Anything could happen.
Well, exactly. And I mean, considering with the shake-up of the electoral boundaries in New Zealand at the next general election, it's going to be a very interesting push-pull, see what ends up happening where.
I just want to bring up this point here by Blake. Now, this is very interesting because I wouldn't say a left-wing party, but what I have noticed, and I saw this in the Singaporean elections, the Conservative Party there, that's in charge of the ship and have been for about half a century now, they came out very strongly against Trump's tariffs. And, they were proposing more worker-friendly policies, which I thought was really interesting seeing from the Conservatives. So it's like, oh, okay. So they literally threw Trump under the bus and called him uncivil over in Singapore. So, yeah, I wonder if something like that is happening too in places like the UK and other people like going, oh, shit, Trump's kind of like election poison. We better get the fuck away from him.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that, considering it does feel like I've never seen a US president literally tank foreign English-speaking country elections before. It's like, it's not something that I've seen happen. Literally, like, he's not just affecting his own country, he's literally putting poison all over the place. I don't know how you sit there and say it.
Yeah, you wouldn't like to think that having Trump in the mix is good for your political fortune, but I think certainly in the Canada case, it's been net positive for the Liberals in Canada, and I don't know. It certainly played into the ALP campaign. In terms of painting Dutton as being too close to Trump, there was a really good union campaign in Victoria. I think it also played out in New South Wales as well around don't trust Dutton. So he has played an outsized role in quite a few elections. So. Well, it'll be just interesting to see what happens in other elections, potentially also in our national election coming up next year. Whether that happens here as well.
Just a thought that popped into my head. I know Friendly Geordie's had quite an impact on the Australian election.
Yes.
I wonder if BHN's going to have the same impact with the Labour Party here in New Zealand. That's going to be really interesting to watch.
It will be seen.
I think so.
Yeah, and also, will they not make the same mistakes they did at the last election? Because I watched some of the mistakes that were made, and it's like, are you trying to deliberately lose the election?
Speaking of Australia's election results, there was a really interesting, I can't quite remember the name off the top of my head, but the seat flipped. Or it went back to a Green Party candidate in Australia, which I thought was really interesting. A place that was historically liberal. What's that?
Is it the seat of Melbourne?
No, further north. But
okay, so it's one of the Queensland ones, because there was one, Kevin Rudd's old seat went green at the last election. It's gone, I think, either Labor or Independent. But there is one of the great. There's been one. There is one seat. There was one seat that was tossing up all over the night, which I think it might be the one that has successfully stayed.
I'll just open up the election map.
There were
And feel
two
free to
seats
share
in,
screen it to us.
there were two seats in Brisbane that last federal election went to the Greens, but this time flipped back to Labor, and that was an interesting phenomenon to watch those Green seats flip back to Labor.
Yep. Let's see if I can find it. Still finding it, guys.
That's all right. I do. Oh, that one doesn't have. That one's got summaries. That hasn't got all the parties in that one.
I mean, I think
I have got results on there, but they're not down to. I can get the electorate ones if we. I'll just flick on the shared screen on my computer, and it's
I'll link it to you. The one that I'm looking at is ABC.
I think if you really want to highlight one of the issues that really separated out the electorate in terms of supporting Labor and allowed the Greens to be not so supported, it was housing, particularly in Australia. The way that the Conservatives over there said that the people had to dip into their super funds in order to gain access to their first home deposit. That was really not well received at all.
Yeah.
And the Greens had a completely different approach around housing, around focusing on rental controls, and that was very popular, but people just didn't support it ultimately at the ballot box.
Laura, is it the seat of Brisbane? Because that's one that's very close with LNP. With Liberal National LNP, that's Liberal National Party. That's the coalition.
Yeah, so it's the one with Maggie Forrest versus Elizabeth Watson Brown. I thought that race was very interesting, especially if you look at the history of that area.
Seat of Ruane.
Yeah.
So that one's got. Okay, so we'll just change the share tab on there. Oh, yes, I see what you mean on that one.
Did you scroll down to past winning parties? You're going to find it very interesting how things have shifted over the years in that area. And unfortunately, I haven't dug into the reasons why, but I thought it was very fascinating.
So I just wanted to pick up on this question from Simon around the Teal independence, because I think that's a really interesting issue. And we saw more Teal independence this time round. We saw more independents picking up seats this time round, and I think that's a growing phenomenon that we'll see over there in Australia. And they will sit on the crossbench. The crossbench will swell this time, and that'll make an interesting dynamic in the lower house, potentially also in the upper house as well. And that'll be an interesting dynamic for Labor, who's ultimately has a majority in the lower house to negotiate. And yeah, the Teal independents will form a greater part of the parliament this time round. So thanks for raising that one, Simon. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So seat of Ryan, but it's interesting that has the results that last one Julian Simmons won it, but this time Elizabeth Watson Brown is winning the same seat after with the redistributions of second preference, second, third, fourth, and whatever countless preference votes. But yeah, that's interesting where that ends up going to.
Yeah, I thought out of all the races in Australia, that one was probably the most interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you've got essentially a conservative candidate up against quite a progressive one. It's not usual you see that kind of a swing in an area that's historically voted in favour of conservatism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that candidate there, Maggie Forrest, is that candidate related to Andrew Forrest, who's the mining magnate? I'm not sure.
Possibly,
I'm
I'd have
just
to look into
asking
that.
the question. Yeah.
We can find that out. There is we can kick off with now. I want to start off with Canada because that was the first election that happened on there. But let's see what the BBC had to bring in on how they rationalise the results on what's happened here and how it's gone, how the BBC's take on it's gone.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has declared victory in the country's general election, seen as one of the most consequential in its history. After his win, Mark Carney addressed directly what many Canadians see as an almost existential threat posed by their North American neighbour. First, though, here's the moment that the Liberals realised their party had won the election. The Liberal Party were well behind in the polls just 3 months ago, but that was before Carney replaced Justin Trudeau as leader and US President Donald Trump upended relations and became the defining issue of the campaign. So here's Mr. Carney's victory speech, in which he directly addresses what he calls America's betrayal.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen. But we also must recognize the reality that our world has fundamentally changed. There is also, for me, as I stand before you this evening, humility in recognizing that, well, many have chosen to place your trust in me, trust in the Liberal Party. Millions of our fellow citizens preferred a different outcome. And my message to every Canadian is this: no matter where you live, no matter what language you speak, no matter how you voted, I will always do my best to represent everyone who calls Canada home.
Now, although Mark Carney's Liberal Party have won, it still remains too close to call whether he'll secure a majority in Parliament. If not, he'll have to rely on other parties to govern. In his concession speech, the leader of the opposition Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, congratulated Mr. Carney, but also made clear that he wouldn't abandon his electoral base.
We hear your stories. We will carry those stories with us into Parliament. We will not forget the people for whom we work and for whom we fight every day. Now, I know that some of you might be disappointed that change did not get over the finish line tonight. Change takes time. Most of all, it requires that we never give up, because our people and our country are worth fighting for.
Joys of what are owning premium middle class started.
Well, our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is in Ottawa, and she gave us a sense of what was happening.
What an extraordinary moment in Canadian political history. The Liberal Party, which only months ago was trailing in the polls by double digits, led by a Prime Minister, a former banker who until months ago had no political experience, has surged ahead in these polls, winning the Liberals a fourth year in office, and Mark Carney the mandate to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. And what unthinkable turnaround. And it is a measure of this moment, an election where the person whose name wasn't on the ballot, President Donald Trump, transformed Canada's political landscape. Not just the swingeing tariffs he's imposed, but also the continuing threat to turn Canada into the 51st state has galvanized Canadians, have caused some Canadians to change their usual voting loyalties in order to put in charge of this country a 60-year-old economist and former banker who they believe is the man to solve the crisis of their lifetime. That's how Mark Carney put it. In his victory speech, though, while he thanked all of his supporters, he also mentioned several times that he would be the Prime Minister for all Canadians, recognizing that there were millions who didn't vote for him. His main challenger, Pierre Poilievre of the Conservatives, still did extraordinarily well in this poll, still got a very high percentage of the popular vote. Mark Carney knows that that is going to be something he's going to have to contend with. So he mentioned this. And he also mentioned, of course, repeatedly, the need to take on that threat from across the border. But he will have to deal with the problems from within as well. So he may soon find out that while he's set himself up as a problem solver, that the problems and crises confronting a banker are of a totally different order in many ways than those confronting a prime minister who has to be accountable to the people and to a country which has its own internal barriers to trade and its own long-standing regional tensions, which at times have threatened to pull this country apart.
Lise Doucette there in Ottawa. Let's pick up on some of what Lise was saying there with...
Let's just move on from that particular section there, because I think we've got the interesting part of the news.
So what I've gathered, looking at all of these election results, is that people, like including Conservatives, right? They kind of want a little safe space where they can, little safe space, woke. They kind of want a little economic safe space, and at the moment, MAGA is economic poison. So you've got people that are conservative that are going to go, well, I can't vote progressive because that's too woke, but I'm okay with voting centre left because these guys have sensible economic policies. I'm going to be safe with them. My job's going to be safe with them. My wealth's going to be safe with them. So I think that's the trend that we're seeing here. Like Carney, he's a banker.
Yeah.
You got Albo in Australia, economist. So people look at that and they go, yep, that's a safe investment with my vote. Whereas they might look at the Greens, and I love the Greens, as everyone can tell. I mean, I'm look at me, I've got a hat that's green and woke. But for some people, for centrists, people who are looking, well, I'm a blue-green, I do care about the environment, but the Greens are just a little bit too far for me. Yeah. These guys are probably going to be the people that will vote Labour in the next election. And I think Labour is playing a pretty smart game here by not branching out too far in terms of progressiveness. Now, again, me saying this as a progressive myself, they're not branching out too far that way, right? They're not focusing too much on what people call identity politics, and they're focusing very much on the economic issues, which is like a safe place, and it's at the top of the list of concerns that most people have. So, yes, I think Labour is going to do quite well in the next election, considering how much of a fuck-up Trump is doing. And I think New Zealand First may be kicked out in the next election if they keep going down the route of let's be diet Trump. No, that's economic poison. People don't want anything to do with Trump.
Yeah, I mean, there's solid reasons why our main parties, and particularly Labour, are focusing on the cost of living at the moment, because it's the number one issue that voters say that they're concerned about.
Yes.
Consistently over the last, I don't know how many years. I mean, at least the last 2 years, rated number one as the number one issue that people are concerned about. So you're never going to see, particularly Labour, moving outside of focusing on the issues that people care about. But I agree with you. Identity politics is a particularly divisive issue, and New Zealand First are focusing on it right now, and it's not serving them well.
No, it's not. It's not going to serve them well going into the election, because people don't care about that. They don't care if there's a trans person that uses the bathroom. They care about whether or not they can buy something at the shop.
They care about what the prices of a bunch of silver beet.
Yeah.
Or was it 2 litre bottle of milk? Not what's between someone's legs in the bathroom.
Yeah, the average Kiwi doesn't care about that.
Yeah,
they really don't. Like Kiwis, we got to give them credit where credit's due. A lot of them are actually more tolerant than people think they are. Right? It's a small minority of people that lose their shit over a trans woman using the bathroom.
Or lose their shit when there is a bronze statue to commemorate the world's first transgender mayor being looked at Carterton, and a bunch of transphobes come howling in on Carterton and say, no, we don't want that, we're pretending to be Carterton residents.
Yeah, I think people are smart enough to know that beating up trans people is not going to fix the economy. I really hope people are smart enough to realise that. Same with Māori people, right? It's like, beating up Māori people, let's get rid of the Māori wards and stuff. That's not going to fix the economy. That's not going to make shit cheaper. That's not going to improve your standard of living.
Yeah. Now, here's something interesting. Now, Canada might wish they had MMP because they're so desperate to keep Pear as a leader that one of their candidates is going to resign. So MP Damien Kirk, who's in one of the safest seats, is stepping aside. Now, I've watched different clips all day. In Canada, in order to have your MP's pension, you have to have 8 years of continuous service. He's at 7.5 years. He's going to give up his ability to get his pension to keep Pear in politics. So let's hear this announcement.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will run for a seat in an Alberta by-election. The news bringing delight to some in Camrose on the northwest edge of the Battle River Crowfoot riding.
Overwhelmingly excited and grateful.
Totally for it.
And disappointment for others.
Not the greatest, at all.
The Battle River Crowfoot riding runs from Camrose down to Drumheller and east to the Saskatchewan border. The MP-elect, Damien Kirk, will step aside. He was first elected in 2019 and won by more than 46,000 votes Monday. Poilievre needs a seat after losing his Ottawa area riding of Carleton.
It was a very hopeful campaign that the Conservatives ran on, and I am grateful that Mr. Poilievre will continue to fight.
In a statement, Poilievre writes, "It is with humility and appreciation that I have accepted Damien Kirk's offer. I will work to earn the trust of the good people of Battle River Crowfoot." Kirk says he intends to run in his riding again in the next federal election.
He wants a safe seat, he wants a temporary seat, and that combination may not be particularly satisfying to the people that live in that region.
Not a huge supporter of Damien Kirk, but he was from here. And is Poilievre going to actually deliver anything for our riding?
Separatist Darcy Bjorgi says he doesn't want an Ottawa voice here at all.
I'm just done. It's always the same.
On Friday, Prime Minister Mark Carney promised no games when it comes to Poilievre's path back to Parliament.
If it's the decision of him and the Conservative Party to trigger, if I can put it that way, a by-election, I will ensure that it happens as soon as possible.
Many of Poilievre's potential constituents say they have one clear expectation.
I would expect him to move here, yeah.
Morgan Black, Global News.
That's kind of a shitty thing to do.
Yeah. So desperate to stay in politics, and because they don't have MMP, they can't come in on the list. So they're literally bumping out a MP out of a safe seat.
I mean, okay, I'll be cheeky here. That's kind of in line with conservative values. You get rid of the weaker ones.
Yeah. But here's the thing is, I'm just going to stand here for this election, and then I'm going to go back to my old electorate, which he could technically lose.
Yeah. I mean, if conservative values means, guy from another area comes in to represent your area who has nothing to do with your area, but, in order to keep his paycheck, but you can see why he lost. Like, come on, people don't buy this shit.
I mean, you had 91 people stand against you.
Yeah.
I think it's always quite, putting another spin on it, it's always quite useful to have a favour be owed to you by the leader of your own party, though. So, that's an inside politics kind of view on it.
True.
And it's also quite useful to do a favour for the leader of your party and to be able to recall that later on. But I think the people of the town have an also a unique view on this whole by-election issue when they said that they expect Pierre Poilievre to live in the town. And I think if that becomes a precondition on him running, first of all, let alone winning, I think that should form part of the deal, that he has to move from Ottawa all the way over to Alberta, but in order to do that, he'd have to probably buy himself a fairly warm coat. Because
I mean, how many golf courses? I mean, did you see the Conservative ad before the election? It's like with those two old guys at the golf course. I'm like, I don't know if this little town has golf courses.
Well, I mean, maybe they could build one for him.
Yeah, they can build one.
Pork barrel politics.
Yes, it's just a carpetbagger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically on that. Now, here's one that let's get to see what Sky News UK has brought up. And I think this might be a good way of summarising what's actually happened in the UK, because this has not gone in the same direction as the other set of elections have. So let's get this random journalist, Ed Conway, to summarise what's happening.
Well, it's a big political moment, but it's also a big data moment when you look at some of the numbers we've had here. In a sense, there's three narratives intertwined here. We've got that by-election result that we heard about, first of all, in Runcorn, a massive win for Reform with an enormous swing in terms of the vote. But perhaps most striking of all, have a look at this, the majority of 6. That is basically the tightest we have ever seen. I want to show you, actually. Let me show you just a bit of historical context here. Looking back at the closest by-elections in modern history, in living memory, there is really nothing to compare with it. Maybe something kind of about 100 years ago, but nonetheless, 6. These are all really tight results. This is an incredibly knife-edge result. We've never seen anything at all like it, but nonetheless, it went for Reform. So that by-election starting that particular story. And then, of course, we've had all these mayoral results as well. And again, it's Reform in Greater Lincolnshire, Reform in Hull and East Yorkshire as well. The Conservatives, they're hanging on in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And actually, in the west of England, Labour doing better than expected. The Greens not doing quite as well as expected. But still, just look at that light blue there. And if we look at this, not just the mayoral results, not just that by-election, but also the share of seats in the local elections, because here you're talking about across the shires in England, historically, and we're going back to the 1970s here, historically, just look at how dominant the Conservatives were, and then Labour as well. So Conservatives and Labour there, really dominating with the vast majority of all of the seats that are won there. And now we have this result here. Just look at Reform. They're completely tearing that apart. And if I show it in one other way, what we'll do is we'll take that and that, so the results, all of these seats for Labour and for the Conservatives, look back over history and just see how much of the share they had. And indeed, for most of history, it's been utter two-party dominance all the way through to where we are now. A complete sea change. And even 2013, which was good for UKIP, they never managed to contend with that. So that is an enormous issue. And when you look at what this might imply across the country as a whole, which we can do, because Michael Thrasher has gone through the numbers, worked out what the national estimated share would be, and it is incredibly striking. Let me just give you a bit of context to this. This is the first time that not the Conservatives, not the Labour Party have been in front here. So it's the first time that that two-party dominance of this national estimated share, going back basically in living memory, that Reform or indeed any other third party has been ahead. And just look how far ahead. 32% share versus 19% for the Labour Party, 18% for the Conservative Party, and the Lib Dems there actually up a little bit at 16%. A really striking set of results that completely changes the picture of politics in this country.
Ed, thank you.
And,
I think we do forget sometimes that the UK used to be essentially an empire, and we've got people who are voting for like Reform UK in a desperate effort to make an empire again. But yeah, England, the UK has been cooked now for like, I don't know, 20 plus years. If they fixed the water supply yet? Have they removed the lead from the water? Have they checked for gas leaks in all the homes? Because, you know, England is just fucking cooked.
Yeah.
I just look at that final data set and I'm slightly skeptical. But I am concerned more generally. I think that last data set was potentially overselling the situation. But I think what it does talk to is a larger concern around, which we are seeing right across the world, around the voter basis looking for parties and looking for they're looking for homes. They're looking for parties that are not.
Yeah, stay on that, because this is very interesting to me. You can see where the votes have split off. Like, you got the Conservatives, okay, we've got a whole bunch of, I don't know, you've got 10% that probably went over to Reform. The Greens are pretty stable for the most part.
So same with the Lib Dems.
Same with the Lib Dems. But yeah, there seems to be a split here between the Conservatives and the Labour. Like, how many people turned out to vote? Were people...
there was one of the
I'm not happy with this as a projection out to a nationwide election, because the voting percentage at local body is completely different to the voting percentage at general elections. So to project out is not helpful.
And also watching one of the clips, I watched one earlier, they sat there and said, when they were talking to voters who voted for reform, and they couldn't tell any difference. Like, they didn't understand there was a difference between local body and general elections.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they're voting based on general election stuff, but the local body's in it. But the unique thing about the UK is that the UK itself, a lot of the funds that go into local government are controlled by central government.
Yes.
So you can have a situation where you can have, like we could sit there and say right now, like Wellington City Council, a great example of the fact that it's got a Labour Green leading council with a national government who's literally trying to sit down there and exercise, look, we can control you, we can do all sorts of things. And the thing is, in the UK, there's a lot of central government funding that goes into local councils. And depending who's in power, depends whether it's generous or sweet.
Well, that's why I was asking about the voter turnout, because, I didn't keep an eye on this election. When did this happen, the locals?
This happened Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I do wonder if the way how Starmer has been responding to a lot of the criticism has motivated people to stay home and not turn out for their locals.
And also, the other one is there's a lot of Jeremy Corbyn Labour supporters who have left the party. Yep. So they're voting in different directions, and some of them may have gone to Reform. Because there's a lot of people who are very furious with Labour, and like the fact that Keir Starmer only got 1 million more votes than Jeremy Corbyn's 2017 election.
Yeah, so Jeremy Corbyn is like a left-wing populist, so some of those votes that went to Reform will be people that, I'll vote for this other guy because he's a populist, even though he's a right-wing populist, right? And then you probably have a bunch of people that go, well, I'll give some of my votes to an independent or to the Greens. And then you have a whole bunch of other people. And this is why I think having the numbers, how many people turned out to vote, would be very interesting. But I suspect that a bunch of people just decided to stay home.
Very, very plausible. So this is showing one of the by-elections, which I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to a recount. There's no more so this is the ones of where. So this one here, I'm going to have to zoom this out slightly. So this will show the map of the UK, and so this is currently on areas where Reform gained voters. The Lib Dems, you can obviously gather the bigger the circle, the bigger the gain. Labour, which you can tell is a very, very tiny dot in there of Buckinghamshire. The Greens, that's a little bit better results they've gone around. Independents, you can see Lancashire went up on there. Buckinghamshire also had gains in there. And the Conservatives, well, they're just not even registered on the map. But here's where you can see which areas have lost councillors. And the Conservatives have had a very big wipeout all across the board. Whereas if we look at Labour, some of the areas they've had some wipeout, but not quite to the same extent. The Lib Dems, really, they've held strong. They've only lost like Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. If we look at the Greens, they're not even losing. And if we look at independents, a couple of areas where they've dropped down, and Reform UK have not lost at all anything.
Mm.
So it's quite intriguing, actually, how the UK has gone on this. But it's interesting how different parts of the world are functioning on their approaches.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the numbers for turnouts.
Yeah, which I'm not sure if there is. And also the weird thing about the UK is when they have what is known as called a four-year recurring term policy, but every council has things slightly differently. Some councils it's all or nothing at the elections. Other councils it's what you call a quarter here, and here, or it's a weird way it runs, and it varies from council to council. And so it's not like New Zealand where every 3 years we just have where all the seats of local bodies come available. You have an absolute nightmare finding out who your candidates are, and you get a booklet that tells you 200 words that you can't make a fair judgment call, and you vote. But UK, they do things very, very differently, and they split out their elections a bit.
Okay, so like here in New Zealand, I'm just looking at the House of Commons library. In England, they tend to have low turnouts like here in New Zealand for local body elections, which could be a reason why we're seeing the numbers we're seeing, because typically one thing I have noticed is that Conservatives tend to be more motivated to go out and vote than Progressives.
Progressives want to try and make sure it works, like that when they go out, they want to make sure it works in progress, which, I mean, I don't know if the UK for local bodies, whether I think they still have polling booths. But also the other issue in the UK is when it comes to voting, you can only go to the polling booth the nearest to your house.
Right, okay.
Yeah, whereas in New Zealand, you can go to any polling booth in the electorate and cast a normal vote. And in or you can go and do a special vote. Now, Nick has just sent something across.
Well, here's an interesting trend too I've just looked at. Last year for the general elections was one of the lowest turnouts in quite a while, in a decade.
So Nick has sent this through about, now this is about local election turnouts?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
So we've got data.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah. So that's showing basically the turnouts of elections across different years.
So that local body turnout is fairly similar to the local body turnout here in New Zealand. It's around about 30%, which is kind of what we get here in New Zealand, which is pretty low, but it's not greater or any lower than what we get here.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good time to encourage people that are watching. Please vote in this year's local elections.
Yes. Thank you. Make sure that you do vote wherever you live.
I don't care. I'll turn up to your house and drag you to the ballot box if I have to.
Well, I'm just hoping Wellington City Council actually puts polling booths at local fruit and vegetable markets each week for special voting. That's something I'd like to see them do, and I'd like Hutt City Council to do the same thing in their area because they have got markets. Upper Hutt, please put one at Brewtown on Sunday. Kapiti Coast District Council, please put one at Paraparaumu Beach. Actually, that one's not hard to actually do. I can make a phone call and that could possibly actually happen because I do have contact to. Well, I'm on a good first name basis with most of the sitting elective on Kapiti Coast District Council.
For the IT politician people, nerds, geeks that are watching, when can we do online voting? Because that seriously needs to be a thing for local body elections.
I would like to know what is a way that you can make it work that keeps the integrity in place. One thing that might be a stepping stone step that could be looked at is saying if your voting paper is emailed to you, and you can print it off and put it in the drop box at the local supermarket. I think that might be a starting point.
Well, I mean, we can look at the local iwi elections, which I voted in. But what's actually happened was I received a letter that had a code in it and had an address in it, and I just put in the address in my search engine and put in the code, and then I got to vote.
Yeah,
and I think
but that's subject to you actually receiving the letter.
Yes, it is.
And that's the thing. That's where local bodies can fall short, is if you don't receive the post or you haven't updated the details or something in there.
Well, it doesn't have to be either or. It can just be another option if people want to vote online.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd love it to have it if there's a way that you could vote online. You get emailed when your voting paper is complete, it gets converted to a PDF. It emails a copy to you. It emails a copy off to the voting place and comes out on the printer. And if you wanted to, you can print out your own copy, throw it in a drop box at the supermarket. So when it gets scanned in, it will say, "Oh, recognise that barcode. We've got that. Oh, they match. This vote has not been tampered with." and have something like that work through the system, so that we can at least we have paper backup options, but you can give that paper backup to the voter, because that's something else I'd love to actually have is, try to retain the old voting papers. That's something we don't have under our secret ballot system.
Yeah, I mean, it is, who was it now? Simon just mentioned before. Yes, Estonia does have online voting. We could look into their system and how they do things. India's got online voting. Japan's got online voting for local body elections. The Philippines, America. I didn't know they had online voting for local body elections, but here's what they do. So yes, it is. E-voting is something that could be done. It's something we should be looking into. I think Estonia's model looks pretty good. Just reading through it now.
It's interesting about how it's run by a private company, Simon. This is the part there. Yes, but the guy who runs the private company actually is, I have found out to be the better person for the job. And he does treat his private company as if it's a public service, and you will get information out of Elections NZ, the one who does the votings in Wellington, does them in Greater Wellington. I'm not sure. I know that they do both the Huts and all the Wairarappas, and I think they do Horowhenua, and they do Wanganui. The guy who runs it does actually treat it better. Like, if it wants to be taken over by central government, I would recommend the guy running it from the private company to be the person who heads it if it got taken over by the Electoral Commission. So, but it's whether you have the right or the wrong person in the job. And in this case, Elections NZ, we've got the right person.
Any thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I have sat in on meetings with the person that we're talking about, Sam. And I mean, that person is very, very good at what they do, and so I would tend to agree with that. I don't know if I'd want it being that particular job being given to anyone else. I know there's a high degree of trust with elected officials and with the councils that run elections. So yeah, I wouldn't want it being given to anybody else at this moment. I know that the campaign officials have a high degree of trust as well. So yeah, I think.
And the thing is,
he does a very good job.
He has spoken highly about us as an organisation and has gone to bat at the right points, and word of mouth has happened. Because, as I say, we had one particular council who made contact with us for it's in the ballot that wasn't in our draft schedule, and it's and the recommendation came from Warwick Land.
The strange thing about Elections NZ is that they run online elections for iwi. And also for company boards and other types of clients as well. So they're completely set up to do online elections. The barrier just sits within DIA at the moment, and there's a hard barrier because GCSB have just said no, and it's a hard no, and there's just no going forward from that point on. But all of the infrastructure, all the technology exists. They could roll it out as a test, almost
for local bodies. Yes,
for local bodies as a test.
Well, you could do, say, a small council. If they chose Carterton could be a good council to try it out on, because they have quite a low number of people in there. Was it Carlisle District Council could be another one they could try it on, because they have they're single town councils that could be tried as a let's see how it goes, what works, what doesn't, and all that sort of thing there as well.
I think for rural areas, this would be a very good way to encourage people to come out and vote.
Yeah, I think the other issue around this is I'm not sure, and I know this sounds kind of strange, whether there would be an interest in boosting voting level. I know that sounds strange, but sometimes it can be quite positive to keep voter levels down. And I know that sounds kind of strange and counterintuitive, but sometimes it is in the interest of incumbent councillors to keep the voting levels down. So there is a bit of a institutional bias against increasing voting participation levels. It's certainly if you're an incumbent, if you're a new councillor who wants to get in, you certainly want to boost the voting participation levels. There are some institutional arguments for and against. But I think a time will come when certainly a new generation of younger people just go, why aren't we doing this? And it needs to happen.
Okay, let's head over to Australia's 9 News that goes and breaks down what's happened with the election with 9 News editor Charles Crocher. Why can't we have Anthony Green? That's the one we want to have because he's Mr. Election.
Will return as Prime Minister for a second term after a Labor landslide in the federal election.
It was just incredible viewing, really, to break it all down. The big wins, the losses, the shock swings. We're joined this morning by Nine's political editor, Charles Croucher, who looks pretty well rested, which is incredible. Charles, an historic night in so many ways. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, we had an early finish. That makes it a bit easier when it comes to the rest. Look, this was a re-election of a Labor government and a realignment of our politics. A remarkable night. You felt the tectonic plates of Australian politics shift. And in a way not many people predicted. The Liberal Party just obliterated in the cities. If not by Labor, then by the Teals. The Independents had a good night. And some deep soul-searching. On Labor's side, they're now looking at the prospect of 2 more terms, given how emphatic this result was. The first-term government to increase their majority since, I think, Bob Menzies back in 1951. It is a remarkable result for what has come in. Some of the seats that weren't even considered have been picked up, capped by the loss of Dixon to Peter Dutton, who not only is out of the leadership but out of the parliament altogether. 3 people I want to mention. Ailey France, who beat Peter Dutton, has, on her 3rd attempt in that seat, has worked so hard in Dixon. She's now a Member of Parliament. Anne Urquhart in Tasmania left the safety of the Senate, ran for a Liberal seat, got a 15% swing to her in the midst of that salmon battle in Tasmania. She'll now, I think, form some part of Cabinet at some point soon. And then Mary Doyle in Aston in Melbourne won that seat of the by-election. That was remarkable. And from that moment on, almost everyone you spoke to at Parliament said, well, that's an incredible thing. She'll be a half a term MP and then that will go back to the Liberal Party. Last night she got a swing to her. She's made that seat, traditionally a Liberal seat, she's made that now safe Labor. 3 women with 3 remarkable results that are just indicative of what was a hell of a night for the Labor Party.
Yeah, it was such a resounding victory, and I mean, you've been there for every minute of this campaign, Charles. Let's go back 6 weeks, because it seemed neck and neck at the start of this campaign. It seemed, you could split the difference between Albo and Peter Dutton. So how is it that Albo managed to sweep this one so defiantly, do you think?
Discipline and structured campaigning. The team led by Paul Erickson at Labor headquarters, Anthony Albanese and his team, led by Tim Gartrell, had an amazing strategy and plan and went through with it. I think that was the thing that stood out. The Liberal Party campaign, on the other hand, sort of tacked around all over the place. They seemed undercooked when it came to their policies, dumping the work from home policy midway through. I can't remember anyone ever doing something as drastic as that. Now we know why. They were seeing on the booths what we saw last night. So when they were door knocking Liberal MPs, they were hearing how bad the problem was, and the damage was already done. It was structured from Labor. They had a tactic and a plan, and in the midst of it all, don't forget, there was Liberation Day in the United States, and Donald Trump threw a big grenade in the middle of elections here and in Canada. And there is no coincidence that the 2 Conservative leaders that at Christmas time in both countries, Canada and Australia, were ahead in the polls, ahead in the betting markets. They got labelled for Pierre Poilievre in Canada, he was Maple Syrup MAGA. For Peter Dutton, he became stuck with that Timu Trump moniker. Both lost the election, both lost their seats, both could cast some blame to the United States as well.
Yeah, it feels like the Trump effect is
Absolutely. Real. And look, we're live in Brisbane this morning, and it can get quite wild politically, as we know, in Queensland. And we saw that last night. You mentioned Peter Dutton. We spoke about the possibility, but I dare say most of us didn't think it was actually going to happen, and it did.
No, I didn't either. You know who did? Anthony Albanese. He started his campaign in that seat. And I spoke to him on a plane ride at some stage during the campaign. I can't remember where it was. But he was adamant that they weren't wasting time on some kind of personal folly up there. They were going there because they thought they could win that seat. And in fact, it was the most visited seat of the entire campaign. Peter Dutton went back 4 times, and for a leader that is unheard of. So he knew something was up there as well. The bigger question now is, what did the coalition do?
Yeah, and that is the question, Charles. It feels like a poison chalice at the moment, but who do you see taking over the leadership?
Well, and they've got to see who's still in the parliament first. There is some still fighting for their seats. Last night, in the sort of text around, the names being thrown up were Angus Taylor, Dan Tehan, Susan Lee, Andrew Hastie in the West. But don't forget, it's not just the leader. You've then got to fill out a cabinet, and lots of the up-and-coming, the generational talent that many were looking to come through lost their seats last night. You've got to find a shadow treasurer. You've got to find a shadow foreign affairs spokesperson. You know, there are all these roles that have to be filled. The Nats are chomping at the bit because they held most of their seats, so they'll want more involvement in the coalition as well. But that further pushes the party to the regions, and the regions need representing. I'm a country kid. But also, you need to somehow get back. There is no path for the coalition to win back government without reclaiming Liberal seats in the heart of cities. The places that went to the Teals, all the independents look like holding. If you can't win the cities, you cannot win the country, and that's the big challenge for the Liberal Party moving forward.
And just quickly, what about the Greens? You know, I mean, they failed to claim a single seat so far. We know that Melbourne will probably fall to them with Adam Ban. I mean, even that is really tight, though, Charles.
You're looking okay in Ruane as well. The Greens will say they had their highest percentage of vote share, I think, of any election in their history. So they will have a role. Deep into like political nerd stuff here, the Senate's going to be a whole lot better for the Labor Party as well. There's a chance they could have effectively a working partnership with the Greens in the Senate and have with those two, the Green seats plus the Labor seats, they'll have a majority in the upper house as well. So this is now a big opportunity for Anthony Albanese in the Labor Party. Potentially 2 terms. There is always the risk of, when you've got a big caucus, there are young and ambitious people in that caucus that will want promotions, and there aren't enough spots to go around. But this is an opportunity, unlike we've seen in Australia now for the better part of 20 years, a stable government that has a mandate that can go out and get things done. And after the difficulties of the last 5 years since COVID, it's time we get things done. The people have put their faith in Anthony Albanese. Let's hope he does something.
Yeah, so from what I've learnt looking at the Australian election and looking at the past election here in New Zealand is that there are 2 key things that you don't mess with. You don't mess with the economy and you don't mess with public services. You touch those 2 things, is like getting fucking cancer, right? Into an election. And people like stability, right? If they see that you're a person that flip-flops wildly, like what Trump's doing, they're going to go run to the centre. They don't want that, right? The centre for a lot of people, and I'm saying this as a progressive, the centre for a lot of people is a safe place to hang out, right? It's kind of like, it's the part of the ship that doesn't get rocked, right?
Yeah.
You don't get thrown all over the place. But yeah, so Trump, I don't think people realize. I mean, Trump, for a normal person, is fucking crazy. He's a crazy man. He's shifting things left, right, and centre. I just got done reading their budget proposal. It's crazy the amount of cuts to public services they're doing. So, if I was in New Zealand First right now, I would be fucking sweating. I would be emailing Shane Jones, telling him to shut down the whole Diet Trump shit. Shut that down because that shit is cancer. It's like playing with uranium. Don't touch it. Put on a hazmat suit. Run away. Do what the Conservatives did in Singapore. Condemn the tariffs. Condemn all that shit.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, the middle voters, they respond to having health care that they can rely on. They respond on being able to pay their mortgages. They respond on being able to have access to good quality health care when they need it, good public transport. So, you know, those are the bread and butter issues that the vast majority of the electorate respond to. And I mean, for Dutton to come out and say we're going to spend $600 billion on a nuclear policy, is just crazy stuff, you know. When Australia is totally blessed around natural resources and they could have some of the best renewable energy.
Not everyone wants a
policy
nuclear power
in the
plant in
world.
their backyard.
You know, so you know they just missed the mark on so many areas where they could have actually had some good policy, but they just totally missed it. And they got cleaned out, you know.
Didn't David Seymour consider saying we need to go nuclear?
David Seymour is fucking cooked. Did you see his latest post today? You know, with the Star Wars thing. You know, he positioned ACT to be like the Empire. You know, the bad guys in the fucking franchise. It's like, man, keep doing dumb shit so the Greens and Labour and Te Pāti Māori can win in the next election because you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot.
Yeah. Well, here's one that I think we should be watching.
Territory isn't trying to be different. It just is.
Anthony Albanese has been re-elected as Australia's Prime Minister in a huge victory for his ruling Labor Party over the opposition coalition. The federal election results in Australia echo those in Canada earlier this week, with an incumbent centre-left government storming back from weak polling to win in comprehensive fashion. Incumbency curse? What incumbency curse? On a dramatic night, Anthony Albanese became the first Australian Prime Minister to win consecutive elections in more than 20 years.
A majority Labor government promised and delivered.
While the final results will take days to confirm, it's clear Australia's Labor Party has increased its majority, marking a huge turnaround from polling a few months ago, which had support for the government at a low.
Well, tonight's not the night that we wanted for the Liberal Party or for our coalition or indeed for our country.
Liberal Party leader Peter Dutton not only faced a loss of the overall election, but the ignominy of losing his own seat.
Now, we didn't do well enough during this campaign. That much is obvious tonight, and I accept full responsibility for that. Earlier on, I called the Prime Minister to congratulate him on his success tonight. It's an historic occasion for the Labor Party, and we recognise that. I congratulated the Prime Minister and wished he and Jodie and Nathan all the very best. And I said to the Prime Minister that his mum would be incredibly proud of his achievement tonight, and he should be very proud of what he's achieved.
There have been two central reasons credited for Labor's turnaround. One, the Liberals' poor campaign, which included high-profile gaffes and a major policy flip-flop. And the second, the Trump factor. Peter Dutton was described by opponents as Australia's Donald Trump, and while he fought to disabuse the comparison, it didn't take much to read between the lines in Anthony Albanese's victory address.
We do not need to beg or borrow or copy from anywhere else. We do not seek our inspiration overseas. We find it right here, in our values and in our people.
In the audience for Labor's victory was New Zealand's Labor Party campaign chair.
They've run a really clear campaign. They've focused on a few key things that matter to voters, and they've been able to highlight what a change in government would mean with significant cuts. It's possible that they've seen the impact of those cuts in New Zealand and said, no thanks, we don't want that here. So a combination of not a great campaign from the coalition, but a very good one from Labor.
Some of Labor's support came at the expense of the Greens, who dropped several seats, while the so-called teal independent candidates largely held theirs. And as Anthony Albanese wakes up and prepares for his second term, his victory serves as a reminder, in the face of global volatility, how quickly fortunes can change.
Yeah, so just a thing I want to point out, and maybe some advice from the Greens. But you've got to embrace patriotism more so than ever now, because you got Trump acting like a fucking madman, declaring trade wars on everyone. Now's the time to dig deep and go, hey, New Zealand's actually better than that. We're actually a bunch of awesome, innovative people that gets shit done. We're actually super supportive of our workers. We support the vulnerable in our community. We lift each other up together. Kotahi mahi. You come out with a message like that, everyone's going to go, yeah, that's sane. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it
Cool.
was great to see. It's great to see Karen there from my perspective, supporting obviously what's going on there and taking notes. So hopefully we will see some of that being picked up and implemented into what's going to happen over the next year. So yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that we don't have to throw minorities under the bus in order to get shit done for Kiwis. You know, it's like we can get stuff done and not be a bunch of douchebags in the process. Like, we don't have to bully people.
Yeah.
We just go, here's a practical way of getting shit done. We've got the plan. We're going to go do it. And that's how you win the next election.
Now, let's have a quick look at the Senate results, because this is going to be where things are going to get interesting in Australia, because they have an upper house, and the upper house, the voting system tends to lead to no majority type of scenarios. But basically, to govern the Senate, you need 39 seats. The interesting thing, I think, in Australia is the Senate is they do not also they call it the president, but the equivalent of the speaker does not have the ability to tie-break votes either. But this is given an idea of what is looking like that's going to be in there. That Labor's going to have 28, the Coalition's going to have 26. With 28, and you have 11 out. Was it? No, that's 11 guaranteed seats. That definitely does slim a majority. Pauline Hanson's going to be the only One Nation that's in there. Now, if we flick over to the areas, now this is the interesting part here, is in the ACT, Independent David Pocock actually has solidly won his seat, whereas the other senator, Katie Gallagher, the vice president of the executive, I think is her current role, is trailing in at second. Now, Katie is the former what do they call it? Chief Minister, or is it First Minister of the ACT? The current person who holds it is Andrew Barr, but the predecessor before that was Katie Gallagher. So it's interesting that with this independent has to do it, whereas at the last election, it was the other way round. Now, the interesting thing is the ACT and Northern Territory, their senators only get elected for 3 years and they get 2 senators, whereas the rest of them, the senators are elected for 6 years and only half come up for election per election. So if we go to New South Wales, this gives an idea of these ones obviously are locked solid and these ones are likely to be re-elected, and these ones went up for election. And as you can see there, what's locked and what's not. They do use STV. It does take quite some time to actually get through the process to go through things there. If we look at Victoria, so they've got one candidate in doubt at the moment, but they've got 4 that are definitely locked in, re-elected. But yeah, and as you can see there, they're not in that section there. But that's actually really interesting. Queensland, was it Corinne Mulholland that won? So she must be a new candidate. And obviously seeing where the likely heads up. Yep.
Well, I'm just glad that they're at the bottom. I'm glad One Nation did not get more than. I mean, it would have been nice to have not seen Pauline Hanson return, but you know,
her Senate seat wasn't up for re-election because she was part of the half that wasn't up for re-election because she came in 2016, she got re-elected in 2022, and in 2025 she is not actually doing it.
Okay, well,
now the big question is, from what Simon's saying there, is which state is Pauline Hanson's daughter standing in? That's the question. If we look at Western Australia, they've had 2 new candidates that have been elected. And obviously 2 re-elected. Was it Australia's first senator in a wheelchair, Jordan Steele John, who is one that I've always, he's basically caused a lot of stirring for the right reasons in the Australian Senate on trying to make it more accessible. But yeah, that's interesting of what's there. If we look at South Australia, as you can see, the names that are in there of who's likely to win, and obviously
just go to Tasmania for a second.
Tasmania is Hudson's daughter. Okay, yep, and we're not far from Tassie. And we look at the Northern Territory, which is the same as the ACT.
Well, I don't know how Hudson's daughter's going to do in Tasmania in the future. They just had a Labour wipeout.
Yeah. So that's what's happened there. Let's get to Tassie. And at the moment, obviously, you can see who's been re-elected. Richard Dwelling is one who has won a seat, so he must be a new senator. Richard Manson Colbeck is ahead. Don't know if that's good. Jackie Lambie is potentially getting there or not. We will see. So it doesn't look like Pauline Hanson's daughter is looking like she's doing that particularly well in Tassie.
I mean, is her last name Hanson or Hudson, or does she go by a different last name? I don't even know what her daughter's called.
No, and I can't even see it on this list of candidates.
Let me just look this shit up. Oh, Pauline Hanson. Okay, I kept calling her Hudson for whatever reason. Lee Hanson. Okay. Well, I don't see Lee on the list. Was she on the list for Tasmania? I didn't see any Hansons there.
Well, it just says who's the ones in there. They also do have a Senate vacancy at the moment, and the reason why they'll have the Senate vacancy is because someone has jumped from the electorate down. Here we are. Lee Hanson. So we have found Pauline Hanson's daughter.
Yeah. Did she win or?
No. We just know where she is on the ballot paper. We know she's on the ballot paper.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah. No, because Australia they do things differently. I mean, hey, it's Australia. You know, can't ask them to sit there and do things like New Zealand.
Yeah, it's a bit called New Zealand.
Yeah, it's But yeah, it gets very, very interesting how things are going in there. But yeah, no one wants what do you call it? Pauline, was it? No one wants one nation.
No one wants the bigots. I mean, what do they stand for anyways? Shouting at Asian people? I mean, what do they do?
I don't know.
Shouting at Muslims
not
and
want
Asian
people to be vaccinated?
I mean, do they offer any economic solutions, like anything viable, or do they just stand there and shout at people, shout at clouds all day? I mean, what do they do? What do they represent as a party?
I think Pauline Hanson wore a burqa into the Senate one day.
Yeah, she did.
So maybe that's what she stands for. I don't know.
Maybe she stands for memes. I don't know.
Offensive costumes into.
She tried to do that as a protest stunt.
Yeah.
To sit there and do it. And it was something that actually sat there and said there was, like, everyone knew it was her, because at the moment, like, walked in there, that would be something Pauline Hanson would do, and he sat in her seat.
It's like, come on, she couldn't pull off a burqa. She looks like a freaking banshee. She even walks like one too.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just trying to think, what other tabs that could be sit there and looked at, because I know Simon says, open the other tabs. It's like, yeah, not sure which one. I've got so many on my screen, it's not funny, but, feel free to message me a link. We've got the seat of Ruane. Actually, let's go and have a look at the seat of, I want to see the seat of Melbourne. Because the seat of Melbourne is the one I actually want to see whether... So at the moment, it does look like it's potentially for the Greens to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 63.8% counted. That's not a good sign there.
Because this is an interesting one, Sam, because this is Adam Bant, who's the Greens leader. And basically, if they lose this one, they're completely out of the parliament. Because they lost the 2 seats in Brisbane, which was the 2 that they won back what they won last time.
Yeah.
And Adam Bant's seat, it was the 3rd seat. So if they lose this one, then they will be completely out of the parliament and the lower house. They will obviously have seats in the upper house because of preferences. But if they lose this, this will be a huge wipeout for them, which would be really sad, actually.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
and
will
also...
be rough.
Yeah, and also, like, here's the thing is, this is the one the Greens have held for a long time. This is not a seat they just got at last election. He's held that seat since 2010.
Yeah, this deserves a deep dive into an autopsy into figuring out what happened there.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, if you take a look at past winning seats on there, it does show that it's been Labour. It's been Labour through and through up until 2010, and then it flipped to Green. Yeah, it's one where it could... This one could blow back very hard. Oh, they actually have a pretty map of telling you where the polling booths are. Oh, I see what's happened. It's taken this area and shoved it, and this area has been put in here, and that's possibly why.
Oh, what the hell? Did they change the boundaries?
Yeah, Australia, they had a redistribution, and they, like New Zealand, they lost a seat, but I don't know how the population quota works, that they ended up losing a seat. But you know how we've lost a seat because the South Island grew quicker than the North? I don't know how Australia's population quota works.
Ah, okay, that explains quite a bit.
Yeah.
I wonder if the same thing happened up at Ruane.
Yeah, let's go to the seat of Ruane and actually and does that have a map in there? But that one doesn't doesn't show boundary redraws unless that particular seat didn't actually need to be redrawn at last election.
Huh.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Okay, so the change there is a bit more organic.
Yeah, Griffith, that's the one that's Kevin Rudd's old seat. I'll get rid of these tabs here and get rid of that one there. And Griffith is the one that's about to flip, that is likely to flip to Labour. This is one of the seats that the Greens grabbed at the last election, which has been pretty much been Labour through and through, as you can see there, with the exception of some random elections it hasn't. I'm not sure what the bigger thing means in there, but that I do know those are years that Kevin Rudd that was definitely a Kevin Rudd period. So let's see if it's got a... So, yeah, I don't know how that's leading to where it is, except for the fact it's probably the redistributions of the second preference votes. So that's probably the thing is it will be redistribution votes for the Liberal National Party. Yeah, that will probably be why it's flipped the way it's did. Yeah, trying to think, what's another electorate that could, I mean, I wouldn't even know what half of these electorates are. I don't know who sits in what electorates or anything. Let's look at Malcolm Turnbull's old electorate, Wentworth, because this one's actually really interesting. Because this is the one that's gone to another independent, but it's the one that went independent, went back to the, Liberal National, went back to the coalition, and I think it's now flipped back to. It's one of the teal seats.
Yeah, it's a legal spender that's got that seat now.
So I wonder if Queensland didn't actually have a boundary redraw. Yep, so this electorate has got bigger since the last election. But that's actually quite interesting to see where the spreads of votes are, of like where the polling places that of which percentage of majorities they are. Gee, I wonder if we've got such a fancy system like this in New Zealand, because I don't think the Electoral Commission has something this flash, or not at that point. But I mean, this data could have all been what's released within today, not from yesterday. But yeah, it's interesting just seeing how these votes are going all around the place.
So the teal seats are quite interesting because the teal candidates are funded by someone called Simon Holmes the Court, and he was really interested to fund independent candidates that signed up to a series of pledges that were aligned to climate goals, and but they weren't aligned to the Greens in Australia. And there was a lot of money on the table. He's got access to he's a billionaire, so cash is not a problem.
He's a different person from Bob Catter.
Yes, he's a different person.
So what you're telling me? So what you're telling me is the teals are kind of like Australia's version of top.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite put them in the top category, but they're certainly very interested in climate change and interested in issues that you look at Wentworth. That is a blue seat, and people in that seat are very interested in climate change, and not destroying the planet ultimately. But they're also interested in making sure their property value goes up at the same time.
Okay. Okay. So basically blue greens. All right. So they're basically
We're looking at Warringah, which is another teal seat, and this one was literally Liberal Party right up until the last election. I wonder if it's Tony Abbott's old seat.
I think that might be, yeah.
Yeah, because the Tony Abbott seat, the one where his seat went for gay marriage in the plebiscite and he still voted against it. Yeah, but that's interesting what areas it's encompassed and what it's lost. No, it's definitely not Tony Abbott's seat, but it's the wrong election because Tony Abbott got booed out in 2019. And so that must not been Tony Abbott's old seat. Let's look at McKellar, which is Bronwyn Bishop's old seat. If you remember sat down there and helicoptered away because she didn't want to spend, it was something like to go 90 minutes up the road?
That sounds like our Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't a natural disaster in that particular situation. She was the speaker, but yeah, this is another seat that used to be strong Liberal Party, but went.
Yeah, now that's interesting, isn't it? That flip.
Yeah. They must have changed the way they do their electoral boundaries in Australia. They must be happy to include parts of the sea now. Because that must be something in there. Whereas we're in New Zealand, if we don't have the sea, we tend to basically it's to do with the sea. We go out however many, it's whatever the regional council boundary limits are out towards sea.
I think it's really interesting looking through all these results because we're getting a pattern of kind of what the Australian voter wants. They want like a stable economy, they want workers' rights, but they also want candidates that take climate change seriously. Looking at a lot of these results, so the independents, that's really interesting with the Teals and the independents,
What's another? Fowler's another independent seat. There seem to be New South Wales is mainly where the independents seem to pop up from. I'm just looking to see what other ones are out there.
Like the teal phenomenon is something we haven't seen here properly. Like we haven't seen really well-funded, climate-aligned, independent candidates running in general elections here. And I think, that's something that we have yet to see come onto the general election kind of landscape. And potentially it's something we'll see in the future.
I think it's partly because we've got MMP. It's probably the reason why we haven't seen it quite go out that way.
Well, that's right, Sam. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Because, we do have MMP, which is something that, something Australia does not have. They use preferential voting.
But it is interesting seeing, people want blue-greens. I think that's something that New Zealand First should really be paying attention to, and same with the ACT Party. It's like, okay, people don't actually mind semi-progressive policies as long as you're taking things like workers' rights and climate change and all that stuff seriously.
Yeah.
But you see, the interesting part of this conversation is that there's always been a well-hidden part of the National Party that is blue-green, that does focus on environmental issues and does talk about those types of related issues. And the big conversation was always, is the National Party going to do a deal with the Greens? Is the Blue Greens going to get an ascendancy within the National Party to reach out and do a deal with the Greens? That's never happened, and it's probably never going to happen. But
no.
But I mean, if that were to happen, that would be a significant move. But I can't see it happening.
You can see why I kind of made that comparison between the Teals and the Top Party, because there's like.
Well, that was also, remember, the Top Party changed its colour at the last election based on what happened in Australia. Because remember, they used to have a black was one of their colours.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something it was looking at that was to appeal to that base. But I mean, the fact is they didn't get any seats. But the one seat they could potentially target and have a serious shot at could be the proposed new Wellington Central electorate.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it's got that Kandala, Crofton Downs, Nio part of Ohio in it, who they might not vote for Nicola Willis, but if Greg O'Connor's out of the picture, potentially, that's potentially where the votes could go is to Jessica Hammond, if she decides to stand for a fourth election. Fourth or third? Fourth election. God. Well, she does, under new boundaries, she still lives in the electorate.
I do wonder how much of a reflection, people voting for independence, I do wonder how much of that is based on what's happening in the States with Bernie Sanders doing his, anti-oligarchy tour and being quite vocal about supporting independent candidates. I wonder if that's starting to have a bit of an effect in places like Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be, yes, because that's something that Bernie Sanders is trying to do, is for the areas where they won't vote Democrat, is to run in a good independent instead, and then have them caucus with the Democrats.
Yep.
Yeah. Which was both him and Angus King have been doing for years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do like what Simon's saying on there. That would be an ideal seat for top to target. Yeah, considering Ohariu is gone, unless we have some massive objection that sits there and results in a big massive rewrite. But yeah, it's an interesting one of like, well, which one do you target? Do you target the electorate or do you target the seat? It's a weird one. Like, which one do you go after? And the fact that the proposed New Wellington Central seat is bluer than the previous one. But the fact is, Robotai has just got a bit greener. And it did get a good chunk of Labour area. Or, Labour section. I don't know, is there any other things of election stuff to sit there and look at? Because I'm not sure if it's worth us trying to start a bill.
I mean, we've gone all around the world. We went to the UK, we went to Canada, we went to Australia, we even went to Singapore.
No, we didn't really delve into Singapore in much detail other than just the fact that there was an election. But we actually could find out, what are the seats and all that sort of thing in there, what voting systems they use.
So they first passed the post.
Usually an election in Singapore is not really newsworthy, to be honest, because usually there's only one party running, and most people just vote for the majority party, and then it gets announced, that the majority party is back in for another 5 years, and off everyone goes. But I think it's interesting that we are having some more kind of shoots of democracy happening. I think that is interesting. So that is an interesting development there.
Yeah, so the party of interest to me was the Workers' Party, seeing how they were going to do. It was quite interesting breaking down province to province how young people were voting. I thought that was quite fascinating when I was watching it live.
Because... Okay. Let's see how they... So they now have 97 seats across 33 electoral divisions. So they must have 33 equivalents of electorate. And they have 80 what do you call it? Was it 18 constituencies that are multi-membered. Oh, that's interesting.
I think they had a slightly lower voter turnout this year in comparison to other years as well.
Yeah.
But they normally have a pretty high turnout.
God, it seems to be a bit like...
The reason why I found Singapore to be quite interesting is because it could potentially provide some clues about how, the Southeast Asian demographic here in New Zealand will probably vote in the next election. And finding out what issues are of interest to them.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
but I just thought that distribution of voting with the opposition, because last time I'm pretty sure the Libertarian Party had 2 seats in Parliament, but they were wiped out in this election. Their seats effectively went to the Workers' Party.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like their equivalent of Labour.
Yeah. So what the hell are these seats here? Nominated MPs. God, are these those MPs if they don't win a seat, you come in like, what's it called, through the back door, like what used to happen in New Zealand when we had the legislative council, our upper house, where if your party won Parliament but you lost your seat, you get appointed as a council of the legislative council, so you can retain becoming a minister and retain your position, but not,
I'm pretty sure Japan had a change in government recently as well, but yeah.
Yeah, they had one where they had the same prime minister or like the same party for years, and then he got assassinated and all went all up the whack.
Shinzo Abe.
Yeah.
Oh, they have what is non-constituency MPs to be the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, heck yes, because the constitution probably actually mandates it. Because it's probably mirroring off a Westminster system.
Yeah,
because
that's what I saw last night.
In Singapore, they have effectively an English-based legal system, so it makes sense for them to have an English-based parliamentary system as well.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay. So the Liberal Democrats are still in charge in Japan. Okay, they just got a different prime minister. Yep.
Yeah, because their prime minister got assassinated.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, I know it was really weird when it actually happened as well, because he's like basically was the only stable figure in politics in Japan.
I don't have much commentary on that assassination, I'll be honest.
Oh, I mean, who knows why? I mean, it was speculated at one stage Sue Bradford was potentially the first MP that could be subjected to a political assassination. That was over her anti-smacking bill. But that kind of delved away and disappeared as being a threat, because later on that threat changed to John Key being the politician most likely for it. But that was after the searches. It was the rewriting of the GCSB Act.
Yeah. We've never had have we ever had ministers assassinated in New Zealand? I don't think we have.
I think so.
No, I think we've had plots that have been foiled.
Yeah.
Because there's been many times that people have looked at we've been speculating whether they would have it happen, but it just never eventuates.
Just on that point around political parties working harder to work with our Asian communities, I think that's a really good point, and it's something that I've certainly had a conversation with people who live in Auckland primarily, because that's where we have large populations of our Asian communities living. And I think it's not as easy as it sounds, because we do have there's a large differentiation between different communities, and every community is very different. So I think it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of investment in time and building up members, leadership within those communities. So yeah, I would really, just thanks for that comment. It's a really good one, and it is something that is being worked on. I can assure you that it is being worked on.
Because all these little differences in culture as well, about how these different groups view politics, and when I was looking into Singapore, conservatism over there is not the same as conservatism in America. So you've got to mess it, the way you reach people, it's going to be a bit different.
Yeah. Well, they've got a very regulated property market to prevent it from going out of control. That's why Singapore is one where you don't typically have you don't have skyrocketing house prices, because they have a very well controlled sector when it comes to housing, because they see housing as a human right, not a nice to have.
And that's one of the things that's quite different, from their conservatism to say America or England, where housing is a nice to have.
To some groups
Singapore's
of people,
an interesting place. I have family members living there, and you're right that the housing market is quite different to over here. For example, if you're a young couple, wanting to, or a young person wanting to go out and buy your first home, you get access to funding and finance through the government in order to get access to your first home, where you just, that's not available here at the moment. Hopefully it will be in the future.
Yeah.
If you purchase a home within a certain distance of your family, so they like for people to live in close proximity to their families. So the closer you are to your family, the cheaper the financing is around your homes. So I think that's a really innovative way to look at creating those family bonds or keeping them, and also getting people into homes. They also.
And it explains why people keep voting for the PAP, because it's like, oh, okay, they've got all these programs in place. Why would I vote for another party that could potentially take away those programs? I've got security here.
Yeah. And the other one is they do a lot of subsidisation of food.
Yes.
That's something that is very big in Singapore. So pretty much like any food products are pretty much tariff-free.
Whereas in America, that'd be woke and DEI.
Yeah.
So in
But,
Singapore, it's just oh, you're hungry? Here's food.
Yeah, Singapore is a island country as well, so it doesn't actually have much productive land.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to import a lot of their food. But from what I do believe they have an oil refinery in there, because that's where a lot of New Zealand's fuel now comes from, since the private sector decided to opt to not upgrade and maintain facilities for Marsden Point, and opted to shut it down as opposed to bringing it up to the latest set of codes.
I think the other issue I'd highlight about Singapore would be the way that they handle both public transport and also private car ownership. In order to own your own car, they place a lot of barriers in front of people to own your own car. It's very, very expensive. Yeah, effectively, yeah. You have to go on a waiting list to purchase a license in order to then go on and purchase your own car, and those licenses are very, very expensive, and most everyday Singaporeans just can't afford to purchase the licenses because they are sold through public auctions, and the bidding for those licenses are incredibly sought after. So most people just rely on public transport, and the public transport there is world class. They have world class bus transport, underground networks of transport. So most people just don't own their own cars. They just go through rely on public transport. So I think that is something really quite innovative, and it's because they've just got 5 million people in a very small, very tiny place. You just can't have everyone driving around in their own car.
Isn't their public transport, like their trains, that autonomous?
It may well be. I haven't been there for a few years, but it
was autonomous in the 80s or 90s. Is the reason why chewing gum was banned, because the train doors, if you put the gum, the doors wouldn't quite shut properly, and because they wouldn't shut properly, the trains wouldn't move. So they banned chewing gum.
I just have memories, Sam, of being on buses and having bus monitors coming up and telling you where to sit on the bus because they wanted people to be packed in, to maximise the space. So I don't remember autonomous buses, but I'm sure.
No, I don't think that, but I think that's interesting about the about having bus monitors trying to better use the space.
Yeah.
But they probably, if they were really clued up bus monitors, they would also work out where you're going on the run, and they'd tell you, oh well, you're getting off at 15 stops down the road, so you get down the back.
Yeah.
So you go. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you look at these things and you go, oh, well, that's interesting. They kind of line up with what progressives in New Zealand wants. But then when you look at their social side, there's how they conduct themselves socially with one another, it's very conservative. The way how they view people who are outsiders, is very conservative. It's like with Japan. It's like you've got the xenophobia there.
Yeah, in Japan, they don't even have what's it called? They don't even take in refugees. Like, they've had one refugee accepted in Japan since they've been part of the refugee quota system.
So
Yeah,
these are the
honest-
things
honest-
you got to be aware of when you talk to people that have come from like Southeast Asia and you're communicating political ideas with them. You know, they'll nod their heads and go, "Yeah, that's awesome. We love public transport. We love public hospitals. We love public housing."
Yeah.
But then when you talk about social issues, like, "Oh, how do you feel about LGBTQ plus people? Or how do you feel about immigrants?" They'll go, "Oh, no, we're not going to go there, eh?" You know, they put their heels down pretty deep.
You know, they
on the
have in
social
Singapore,
side-
they have what is called a calling off day,
No.
which is known as an election blackout, which our election, so they have a 24-hour calling off day before they actually hold their elections. Whereas our calling off period is midnight to 7 p.m. Just for those to put some comparisons in there, that's in Singapore. They have a calling off day, whereas in Australia, they're banned from having TV and radio advertising from the midnight on the Wednesday before the polls close, but you're still allowed to have interviews and all that sort of thing in the lead up to the elections. Because on election day, you can still have in Australia, you can actually have the interviews with politicians on election day. It's part of the
I think in
reason why
Australia they
nation-
can also do campaigning actually as you're going up to the polling booth. Or they might have banned that this year, but they certainly did that in previous years, that you would have volunteers handing election
How to vote
material
cards.
to how to vote cards, to voters in real time, live, as they were going to make their decision. That's pretty. From a New Zealand perspective, that's pretty radical stuff. We've never been able to do that.
No, I remember someone who went on election day to vote. It's like, go to the polling booth and vote, because at Newtown School it had Mana, they had a Mana section, and he lived in Mana electorate. And so he went to vote, and he asked the polling workers, "Can you tell me the policies of each and every political party?" So we're not allowed to do that. And screwed him right out. So he left because he wanted to make an informed choice to vote. But I assumed he was informed. Funny enough, he didn't vote for Anita Baker at the last election, so he definitely now votes. I don't know why, but that's his choice. But I got to admit, probably were really last local body elections. They didn't really. She didn't really have big opposition against her because it was 3 candidates, and they also ran in wards as well. And I know that in some areas that turns people off. Yeah.
Well, I've pretty much run out of things to talk about.
I know. So I've managed to cover 4 countries' elections in 1 week.
How did
Unless
they
you got,
organise that? That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Unless you got some gag reels from I don't know, elections or whatever. It's but it's I haven't got anything
I think
left.
we've done well. I think we've managed to squeeze all of the elections out of the election lemon.
Yeah.
Or the
Unless you wanna-
democracy sausage, depending on how you look at it.
Actually, here's something I want to take out from here. What do you think about Tory Whānau's announcement about stepping aside from running for mayor and running for the Te Whanganui-a-Tara Māori ward seat?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I don't really have too much thoughts on it.
Well, you haven't got any skin in the game. You're voting in Taurua.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just all I can say is, I wish you the best of luck. That's pretty much all the commentary I can offer on that one.
But for someone who lives in the area...
Yes, I do live in the area, but I'm not able to vote. Tory's made it so that I can't vote for her now, which is disappointing, because she's gone on to Māori role. But like I said, I think it's ultimately the right decision for her, and I ultimately wish her all the best in the campaign that she's about to take, about to engage in. There's been a lot of media commentary around her decision, and I think, I just wish her all the best in her campaign.
Yeah. No, I wish her the best. My vote for the Māori ward referendum will not be changing. but I do think the referendum could be a referendum on her rather than a referendum on Simeon Brown's racist vanity project.
It could if there aren't any other candidates running against her.
Yeah.
But
there is. Was it Matthew Ruane? You correct me if I get the name right.
Matt Raverty, yeah.
Yeah. He is standing for the Labour Party in that ward, so it's not a slam dunk elected unopposed situation for Tory. So, and I would think there would be another challenger. I know I've spoken with Ray Chung, and I've said to Ray Chung they should stand a candidate in the Te Whanganui-a-Tara Māori ward to show the fact that you are targeting all the wards, not excluding the Māori ward. And I said it just for what it looks like, because otherwise, for those Māori ward voters, you're not going to give them a chance to say vote for one of your candidates. And with the recent announcement, that may have actually made them now look again. Maybe they will do that because of the fact that Tory is standing there.
I'll be very surprised if Wellington lost their Māori ward. They're, traditionally pretty liberal or pretty progressive with their values in Wellington, especially like in Wellington City. So that would be a shocker. But I think in order to protect the Māori ward in Wellington, the more candidates, the better that are running, so it doesn't become like a referendum against Tory.
Yeah, and that's something there. And by extension, we've got a referendum for the Māori ward for the Greater Wellington Regional Council, and that has no history because it's not yet been established. It's getting established as local body elections. It could inadvertently tank. It could call, depending how people go when it comes to voting, because I believe with local body elections, when it comes to the referendum, there'll be 2 ticks to retain or 2 ticks to disestablish. You're not going to get people to split vote their Māori ward referendum on 2 different referendums because it's the same question.
Did you want to speak to this, Sam?
Ray, is he right wing? Someone outside Wellington? Ray Chung is on the right wing scale. However, he does have some social. He does have a social conscience, and there are some things where he will bat where other people, where traditional right wingers would not bat. He is one who's very targeted when it comes to things like disabled car parks, and he hates disabled car park poaching. That's something he is against. But I think anyone with a moral conscience on that would be on that one. He was one who, he was the one and only, he was one of 2 councillors that voted to not send out the referendum but to disestablish the Māori ward, but I don't think he was probably aware that his reasoning was because of the cost of the referendum and the ratepayers can't afford it, but the ratepayers wouldn't also be able to afford a representation review that actually costs more than the referendum.
I think it's also fair to say that Ray was one of the councillors that voted against the sale of the airport shares.
Yes.
So that's probably one of the single bright point for, well, I shouldn't say the single, one of the bright points for his last term. I'm sure there are others, but that's probably the one that stands out.
And there was another amendment that was put into with the airport shares. And it was interesting because there were only 2 councillors I talked to about this. One was Ray Chung, the other one was Nico Winera. And Nico Winera put the amendment in, and Ray Chung ironically voted for it, which was to withhold the dividends from the airport into the council's general revenue fund and put that into the investment fund instead of selling the shares. And it was interesting doing that because I said, would that be a better option? Because selling the shares, I said, is politically toxic. But could Wellingtonian suffice that as an alternative? But obviously, that didn't cross the line in the councils because I think they only got like 4 votes. But it was interesting which amendments. But it was interesting which ones voted for, who voted for what. I like what Stacey said. I miss Nico being my councillor.
Yeah, Nico's a good guy. Had the privilege of speaking to him on a couple of occasions. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and he's one who is actually if you get likes of Tony Randall or John Panovich, they speak very highly of him. Yeah. Also, those two also speak very highly of Ben, which is ironically their equivalent councillor. Yeah, it's interesting what you hear on Wellington City Council when you hear things at a more private level of who likes who on that council and who can't stand who. Yeah. So, yeah. So we got, we'll do the, yes, but we'll do the bills coming up first.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. If you want to support my employer and keep me employed, please order some fruits and vegetables from Moshams if you're in the 04 telephone calling area, if you know what that means.
Eat your plants, they're good for you.
Going out there. Whoopsie! No point telling you about that one, those submissions have closed. Now, this is one of Nick's baby. We've got to put a submission on there. The Plain Language Repeal Act. We've got to put a submission to say, no, we do not oppose it. And hey, if you really want to rub it in, you mentioned the debacle of a speech from Penny Simmons over it. So it's too confusing. We're having a plain language using that I can understand and a non-plain language. How do I know if it works?
Oh, remember when we did the submissions for that with Frankie? That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop laughing. Sorry, watching the debate about that in the House. Yep, that was good.
The Medicines Amendment Bill closes on the 19th of May. The Employment Termination by Agreement Amendment Bill. Yes, we've got to put that in so we cannot have sex offenders like Tim Jargo by the victim's silence. The Jurors' Age of Excusal Amendment Bill. That one a little bit more sign on. The Sales of Alcohol Liquor Rules by Kira McAnulty. And the Anzac Day Amendment Bill, which is the one that Rob Golden says we should go and put in a submission, and we should also put in there to acknowledge the the New Zealand land wars. So we all got a few submissions to sit there and type up going up in there. And thanks for Eva, Laura, Stacey, who's pumping in their submission links into the chat at the same time, because I know I've been watching the numbers going up while I've been typing that. And Stacey has sat there and gone with the word, you're welcome. So, Laura, you're the one who's got the shared screen on there. Can you, would you be able to share the latest?
If my computer doesn't die. I thought I sent the design to you, but very well.
Well, you have. I thought it might. If you want to, I can sit there and grab it.
I think that'd be best. You commissioned it. You just open up the PNG file. Don't open up the
I know that. That's how I was doing all of them. Where is it? What do you guys think of a t-shirt design for t-shirts and hoodies? Let's
This is
scroll
potentially coming to a t-shirt near you guys.
Well, we've got one awesome from Jason. Stacey has said, dude, that's awesome.
Basically, it's a map of where we're going to be doing all the shows for the local body elections.
Yes, and the retrospective city and district councils we're covering.
Yes. Yay! Kiwi-Skirt buy. Kiwi-Skirt, you buy everything. That's cheating. Like, dude. Yeah. That's a like dude shirt. Yeah, that'd look good on a dude. I agree.
I'm just trying to think, having like my own branded hoodie with that, or it would be nice like if we actually like see if we can find ways that we can actually have like because that was something was it not Nick who's on here but Nick Hollander said we need to have like uniform shirts or something.
Yeah.
And that would actually be really cool to have as the shirts, and that's something that you know, I'm looking at with the event ticketing system, actually like putting that as an option where you can actually when you go and get your ticket for the show, your virtual ticket, the tickets you don't have to have, but that gives us numbers to do it. But if you do them online, if you're watching online, it actually sends you all the links. Even you don't need the links for it to function, but it does all that automatically.
You know, I was thinking what I could do to make this design more interesting is I could put like the little, you know how kind of like each town like has a mascot, you know, like Tai Happy has a giant boot, or
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I could do something like that. It's like make
Carl
it
the roll of the toilet paper.
Yeah, or have a giant kiwi for Taro, or do things like that. It's just an idea. But for now, I kept it simple because when you're putting things on a T-shirt, you don't want to overcomplicate things. Otherwise, it just turns into bloody NASCAR advertisements. But if people, if people were into that, that is definitely something I could do.
Yeah, and here's something to sit there and watch about. If you've been on the website lately, you will start seeing a whole heap of show stuff starting to appear on there. So you go to our website, that's in there. We also have a section there, even though we do have the Māori wards in the retrospective regions, we do have a separate area for the Māori wards as well. So you've got two, like if you're Māori ward, you've got two ways you can access it. So yeah, trying to think, when do we send off the data to Print Mighty?
Well, I mean, you can send it off any time you want. I'm just waiting for chat to criticize my work so I can improve it. Do you think I should add little cute icons or not? I mean, I can do that instead of like the little GPS things. I can add like the little icon for the town, like the kiwi or the gumboot or the kiwi fruit or whatever.
I mean, maybe a second design of towns that you could have different things in there. Because, put it this way. This map is about the district councils they're covering in there.
I agree, Kai Matara. I will proudly make those shirts too.
But the interesting one is that is based on the councils we're covering, not necessarily not necessarily the actual locations. Like if we sit there and go onto the map here, I mean, one of the places we're going to be covering is a town called Muru. You guys can't see it. You guys can't actually see where I've got my mouse on there.
Whoa!
Okay.
Extra zoom. It's like, look, if you just hold it there, it's like, look, there's that one line that's out of place.
That's where Muru Para is.
It's over. You've got to fix it.
Yeah, so that's where Muru Para is, which is a logging town that to the average person is out in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, we've got time. I can make some cute little icons.
I mean, the other thing I was thinking about is I don't think Print Mighty can do it, but I want to see if we can get a company in New Zealand who can print us off playing cards as on demand, and the playing cards could be your political snap cards.
Oh.
So it is the candidates of the councils, and you have them in there, and the aim is for you to be able to play Snap.
I saw it, Laura, that line. I saw the line too. It's over.
Yeah.
Right, get rid of it. Put it in the recycling bin. It's over.
Yeah. Well, there is some good news coming next week. Parliament's sitting again this week, and we'll find out exactly what bills that are coming up, whether there will be a change to what was initially going to be planned. Will the House go into urgency? We'll find out. And we are, about 2.5 weeks away from Budget Day.
Yep, popcorn. I'm investing in big popcorn for budget day.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to fight night against Barbara and Nicola Willis. I think it's going to be great. Barbara Edmonds is going to be in the red corner, and Nicola Willis is going to be in the blue corner, and they're going to fight it out in Parliament. And I'll be the ref.
Can Chippy allocate the leader of the opposition speech to Barbara Edmonds? As in the Labour Party, the opposition leader's reply.
I don't know. That's a question for Chippy.
Anything is possible, but yeah.
Because who would be the better one to roar into Nicola Willis on that first one? Would it be Chippy or Barbara?
I mean, I think it probably, you know what I'm going to say here, don't you, Sam? It's obviously going to be Chippy, but
yeah.
I think
you got to unleash Barbara. Let it go.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously.
Let her throw jandals at Nicola
Barbara
Willis.
Edmonds is going to give a stunning reply speech, to probably the worst budget that we're going to see since 1991. And some people listening tonight weren't born in 1991. So it's going to be an absolutely unbelievably bad budget coming up.
Jandal nunchucks, let's go. I want to see Barbara Edmonds with Jandal nunchucks. I just want to see her leap over her desk and just run at Nicola Willis. The Jandals. No, don't do that. But
I love the imagery. But
yeah.
Okay, let's get rolling to the closing credits, and if you want to stay for post-show chats, and we'll see everyone back here at 8 p.m. We might be earlier. We might have a bumper week of shows to sit there and do. So we'll see everyone back here next week. Have a good evening.
May the woke be with you.
Thank you for watching The Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/It's in the Ballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot Productions, live at 8 p.m.